Hey everybody, welcome to LinuxCast. I'm your host, Matt.
I'm Nate.
And I'm Drew.
Welcome to the LinuxCast. I'm going to actually, before we do anything else, I'm going to make this actually full screen so it looks better. But anyways, what's up, guys? So if you just watched the pre-show of this podcast, which you can do if you tune in live on Tuesdays at 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time. It's only like, 8:44 now? That's not bad. It's not even the fucking record. But anyways, I had just a little bit of audio problems. Just a little bit. But we're here. We're going to do a podcast about Linuxy things, as we usually do. But first, we have ourselves a mini topic. And I don't know what the mini topic is. That's also not unusual. But tonight, I at least have a reason for not remembering. It's something about what Linux apps have you regretted leaving behind or something like that. Is that what that is?
What we gave up and why.
Yeah.
Okay. I was close. Drew, you can go first on this one. I think this was yours.
So I'm going to, there's some really low hanging fruit, which I will avoid talking about, but so there are things that I won't touch with a 10-foot pole. And so that's how I'm going to answer this. Kdenlive is the thing that I won't touch with and I have tried, guys. I just can't get my brain to actually get anything done in Kdenlive. So I've given up on even trying to use something like an editor for videos. I just can't do it. So I don't even try anymore.
I'm with you, but that's all Nate's fault. Nate, what about you? What application have you given up on?
Since he took mine, I'm going to go with
sorry.
the... I had a whole list. If you see my notes that I added, I had a whole list of stuff. But I'm going to go with the Steam app, the Flatpak version. That mess just don't work. It breaks all the time. It has dependency problems all the time. So I've given up even trying to install it. I just either go to the website and get the dev package or, I don't even try anymore. I get straight from the source.
Okay. I think mine's fairly obvious is Emacs. I've tried Emacs no less than 10 times. For content purposes, mind you, I'm perfectly happy with them. But I mean, there's a lot of content there with Emacs if you can get yourself into it. But I can't. Like, I've tried every iteration. I've tried Vanilla. I've tried Doom. I've tried SpaceMax. I've tried, you name it. I've tried it. It's an atrocious application that should not be used by anybody as far as I'm concerned. It is just not a good application. Like I was sorry. Like, man, you should use it. It's a great eLisp interpreter. I don't need an eLisp interpreter. I don't know what an eLisp interpreter actually does other than interpret eLisp, which I don't know what eLisp is. I couldn't tell. I mean, it's a language, I guess, but I mean, you might as well be interpreting assembly for all I care. I don't. It just doesn't matter to me. So, Emacs is my answer to that question. Honestly, it's like I suppose I could say Xmonad would be one that I actually enjoyed using, but had to give up on just because I don't like Haskell. But those are, really. So there we go. That's our little mini topic. We do those to kind of break the ice. So tonight we're going to actually be talking about PewDiePie. Now, I don't think that I've ever said the words PewDiePie out loud before until just this second, to be honest with you. I've never watched a PewDiePie video. That's 100% true. Like, I've never, even this video now that he switched to Linux on, haven't watched it. But I have watched other Linux YouTubers talk about it, so maybe that counts. Anyway.
Through osmosis,
it's PewDiePie by association. But I know who he is. He's a big Linux. He's not a big Linux YouTuber. He's a big YouTuber. He's like the biggest YouTuber. Like, is he? He has more YouTube followers or subscribers than anybody else, I think.
Really? Wow.
I think he has more than Mr. Beast and more than all the rest. But I might be wrong about that. I don't. I may play a Linux YouTuber on. I might play a YouTuber on TV, but I'm not actually one. So. Anyways, the big news is, now that he's done rambling about nonsense, is that PewDiePie has switched to Linux, or at least apparently has done so. And because he's such a big YouTuber, I have a question for you guys. Do you think that this is actually going to be something, or is it just a nothing burger, just like all of the rest? Because there has been, I kind of tack this on to the rest of the topic, is that there has been a very large number of YouTubers, both big and small, over the course of the last few months, making videos. I switched to Linux for 30 days. I switched to Linux for a week. I switched to Linux for a month or whatever, right? So do you guys think that this trend, PewDiePie and all the rest, is something or nothing? Drew, what you got?
Well, first of all, I watched the video and I was appreciative of the fact that he actually provided like arguments in favor of and the reasons for switching to Linux. You know, one, he said, first thing he said was Linux doesn't baby users like Windows does. You know, it's like he used the example like, are you sure you want to do that? And, you know, they's like, yes, I want to do that. And so Windows babies users. The other thing is, talked about bloatware. He also talked about customization and the freedom associated with that customization. And he didn't want to be beholding to Microsoft's increased control on its user base. So I appreciated what he actually gave good reasons, just not like, hey, I want to use something really cool and new. He had a game plan going in and he did it. And so for that, I think that, and because of his user base being as big as it is, I'm going to go with like, yeah, it can definitely, is it going to move the needle? Yes, but barely. I think that's where we're going to have like a discussion. How much can it actually like move the needle in terms of new users to the space, new users to Linux? Is it going to be 1% of market share increase, 2%, maybe 0.5%? Somewhere in there, I think is the truth though. What do you think, Nate?
I'm not sure because I guess I'm going to play what's it called? Devil's advocate on this, because even though he's a big influencer, I hate that word with a passion, but even though he's a big influencer on YouTube, I still find that people tend to just use what works, even though you can tell them, you know, Linux is more secure. It's got a better privacy. There's many applications that do work. There's newer applications you never heard of that you can learn, but I mean, maybe, and I am in the same boat with you. I think if it does move, it might be 1 or 2% at most, but I still don't see people just dropping. The only way I could see people really dropping Windows is when Windows finally goes to a subscription base that you have to pay $9.99 a month just to use your operating system.
That sounds like horrific, but so I think that to answer the question, it's going to be split into 3 groups. So the vast majority, the biggest group, like 99% of them, are going to be people who just watched the video, found it interesting, and moved on with their Windows life. You know, that's going to be the vast majority of them. Then the other 2 groups are much smaller. Both of those groups are going to try Linux. And the second biggest group is going to be the group that tries Linux, has the inevitable problems that come with switching to Linux, you know, not being able to get Photoshop or whatever, not be able to get Outlook or whatever, AutoCAD.
Working audio.
Right. Have Wi-Fi problems, or, you know, the traditional Linux problems that we've all faced, right? Those people immediately back to Windows or Mac or whatever they were using before. That's the second biggest group. Then there's going to be the smallest group that actually took the most from the video, are the actual nerds, and who are interested in, you know, actually putting in the effort to use Linux the way that, you know, it's kind of supposed to be used. Now, that last sentence sounded very gatekeepery, but the way I've always viewed this whole thing of people switching is just that you have to be willing to put in effort. You can't come here and expect to just know how to use it. It's just not possible. Just like if you've never used Windows before, you'd have to go there and learn how to use it. It's something new. You don't hop into a car knowing how to drive it. Otherwise, they wouldn't have driver's education classes, you know? So it's exactly the same thing here. So I think that it will be a very small portion of his audience who actually switches and sticks around. And I'm talking just a few. I would get, maybe I'm being ultimately cynical, but I just think it's gonna be just a few, maybe a few thousand, maybe a 10,000. But if you're expecting like 1 million people, that's just, I think that's way too much.
Yeah, I'm going to push back on that because we're talking about a guy that has what, like 110 million subscribers to his YouTube channel, somewhere in there. I don't have it in front of me, so I'm guessing. If I had to
I think it's around
guess.
there,
Yeah. And me, okay, again, I'm not a gamer, and I've said that repeatedly that I am not a gamer, but I have to acknowledge the fact that gaming influencers like PewDiePie have a significant impact on their audience and the choices that they make. It's like, oh, well, I love this game. You see, a massive influx of people playing that game, or a specific video card, or, changing to Linux. So with that type of like influencer and his kind of cachet, I think that there's going to be a bump, a significant bump. And here's the thing, it's going to be hard to determine what that bump will be, because we've talked about this a little bit with Windows 10 coming to end of life, coming up very, very soon to end of life. And the problems associated with Microsoft not being able to support that group of people, and the restrictions on Windows 11 and their hardware. Okay. So with all that being said, I think that there's going to be, I don't want to say, I think maybe as much as a 1% to 2% increase in market share, and I think that's a conservative estimate over the next, say, 6 months to a year.
I wish I had that kind of optimism. Maybe I'm just too cynical. Maybe this is my problem. But I think where we're going to see it, I think what's more interesting is that I think he'll spawn other influencers into trying. And that's where we'll see the success or the failure of this whole thing. Because if he'll spawn other YouTubers who inevitably follow his lead. And if they have success, then your vision of the future, Drew, I think will happen. Because you broaden past the 110 million, which in the grand scheme of things, probably not, there's 2 billion, there's 7 billion people on Earth, and, 2 billion, Windows users or whatever it is, so if you bring in a community of influencers, maybe that's the way, if they have success. But, and we can switch over to this now. We've seen a rush of other influencers switch over to Linux over the course of the last few months. How many of them have you seen actually be successful and stick around? The ones that I've seen, the vast majority of them, like, just pull one out of my head, Craft Computing. Like, he's an actual, he uses Linux on servers and stuff. He couldn't do it, right? He switched to Linux full time and then switched back after 30 days. And if someone like that who uses Linux all the time on servers can't do it, how can other people? Guys, I run a Linux channel. I'm not actually as negative on Linux as it sounds like I'm being, but it just, from the experiences I've seen other people have, it just doesn't seem like something that a lot of people are willing to put effort into. And I don't think, let me ask you this, guys. Do you think that a month, if you were to switch to Linux, do you think a month is enough to have the proper experience?
No.
No, I agree with that.
And that's where this is going to go all fall down, because that's what they're going to give it. Oops, I just hit the microphone tradition. That's where this is all going to fall down, is that the vast majority of them, if we're lucky, will give it a month. And some of them won't even give it that. And I think that you really have to have more than that in order to make this successful. Drew, what were you going to say?
No, I was going to agree with you in the sense that, like, first of all, the gaming aspect of it can't be like minimized, because we're talking about billions and billions of dollars in gaming marketing worldwide, and when you have an issue like, or you have somebody as an influencer like PewDiePie, you're going to have that group of people that is going to at least try it. Okay. If he goes back, that would be catastrophic. That would be really, really bad. But I agree with you because not everybody is as tech savvy as they would like to think they are in terms of these gamers. And so at the first hint of a problem, they'll be like scurrying back to Windows, likely. I hope that there is that. And I'm taking that into account, that 1 to 2% bump that I was talking about. I still think that can happen, and I don't know that it's that big of a stretch to believe that. But at the same time, yeah, there's going to be that group of people that you're talking about, Matt, that are going to try it, and at first sign of trouble, bail.
Let me see if Nate, what do you think a proper amount of time is for trying Linux, and do you think that the Linux YouTube or the YouTuber sphere is patient enough for that amount of time?
I have always said, if you're going to try Linux, you either have 2 different systems. You keep one that has Windows, and you put one that has Linux. And then you play around with Linux and get comfortable with it. And it may take you a year. Or you dual boot with 2 different drives, so Windows can't mess with your Linux partition. That's what I've always said. I can't say that, 3 months is plenty of time, because really it's not. Even now, I've been using Linux since Ubuntu, was it 6 point something? Dapper Drake is what it was called. I've been using Linux for a long time, and I still run into issues that are new to me. Other people have ran into it, but, things like that. And I kind of agree with some people will be running back as the first part of the issue, but I see a different problem. And the main problem is, okay, if you get gamers coming, that's great, but they still need things like, this to work. They still need their software for their keyboards. They have their lighting setup. They have their webcams. They have like all that stuff needs to work. If we can gain more market share, then maybe software developers would pull their head out of their butt and actually support it.
Well, and the ultimate travesty of all this is that this happened before Valve figured out anti-cheat, right? Because there's still a significant portion of games that you can't play on Linux, and it's not a Linux problem. It's just that anti-cheat exists, and a lot of people play competitive shooters, competitive online games like Fortnite and whatever the kids these days are playing, and you can't do that on Linux. You just can't do it. And maybe there's a workaround for some of them. Maybe you don't get your account banned or whatever. But I think that maybe I'm shoehorning a lot of gamers into that kind of category. But you have to be a very specific type of gamer to be okay with Linux only. Like I'm thinking of one specific Discord user right now who is very much a come to Linux, go to Windows, come to Linux, go to Windows kind of guy. We all know who we're talking about here. And just that's the exact situation that he should do, is he should have both. But I don't think that as hard as switching into Linux is, and I'm not saying it's like uber difficult, but I mean, it takes some technical skills. Dual booting's actually quite a bit harder because you have to deal with Windows messing around with your bootloader all the damn time, every single update, by the way. You have to mess around with it time all the time, so dual booting actually adds an extra layer of things if you even have an extra hard drive around to actually mess around with, or know how to partition one, so I think that there's so many layers of complexity here that it just shuts out so many people unless they have the gumption to do it, right? Like we all had, like our initial push into Linux required us to want to do it. Beyond, I can't, maybe this all comes down to the fact that I've never watched an influencer do anything and said, you know what? I got to do that. Maybe I'm 40 years old. I've never watched someone jump off a bridge and say, you know what? That's a good idea. So obviously Linux isn't as bad as jumping off a bridge, but it's just like, I don't, maybe
but it's
I don't.
not unlike that either, because you're talking about like, okay, so I don't know what his demographic is. Going back to PewDiePie.
Minecraft mostly.
Yeah. Are those younger viewers? Are those kind of like 18 to 20 or a little bit older than that? Because what they're going to find out is when they switch, or if they decide, hey, I'm going to switch to Linux or give it a shot. And so it's not going to be plug and play. for the most part. That's where I think people will have that kind of pushback. Okay. It's going to be like plug and pray, because it's not going to work exactly the way you're going to want it to right out of the box. Granted, we are much better at plug and play than we have ever been in the history of Linux by a long shot. You have distros that can really provide a much more streamlined and a good experience right out of the box. That doesn't mean that you're not going to Google for a few hours and go, how do I do this? Or how do I do that? And that, again, that is a young person's problem. They're not going to have the patience maybe to do that. Okay. And it sounds like I'm talking myself out of my initial impression about like who's going to stay. I'm still going with it. I'm just telling you that group of people though are probably going to have more problems than they're willing to accept. And then they'll go back. But if you're talking about kind of like that kind of upper tier, maybe not such young users, then they may give it more of a shot than, people that just don't have the patience.
I don't know. I'm going to push back on the young people part a little bit, because I think if you introduce them young to Linux and they have something to fiddle with, that over time, they may go back to Windows. I'm not saying that's not the possibility. But if you can introduce it young enough, then as they get older, they're like, oh, I kind of want to retry this. And I think that's how you'll gain the market share, because a lot of the gamer YouTubers, it's still more of a younger market. And when I say young, I'm talking like from, I don't know, what kids age up into possibly like 23, 24. So if you can introduce them when they're young, really young, then later on, they'll still have that interest. And I think that's how you will gain the market share back.
Yeah, they can use phones better than I will ever be able to use a phone. Like I can't use a phone for shit. Seriously. I mean, I can answer the phone, but people will I see people typing with and I'm like, yeah, I can't do that. I actually have to speak it and have it do the conversion from audio. Yes, I know, Matt. All right.
I'm sorry. I was thinking, Drew picks up the phone. Hello, operator.
Crank, crank, crank. How would you like to connect your call?
Well, no, it's like my generation, 1-800 call collector, whatever it used to be. Like, had to do that for long distance calls and the phone cards and stuff. You kids these days. No, but you guys are exactly right. It's really weird, because I can still consider myself a very young guy. Like I made my last video about racing. I admitted that I turned 40, and there's like half a dozen comments in that comment section like, you're 40 years old? You look 27. Like, first of all, thanks guys. I really appreciate that. But I was born in 85. So I'm officially 40 years old, but I do still consider myself a young guy, but there's still some part of my brain that switched on after 40 years old that now looks down upon the younger generations. Like I have a serious bias against Gen Z, and I don't even know what the other generations are called. So
Alpha, I think it's the next one.
Yeah. Sure. Okay. they're too young for me. That's the thing. And I think that my problem is that I do have that bias, and I'll admit against it, but I also have the same thing you're talking about, Nate, is like if you introduce them young. But I think that in order for that to work, and especially if we're going to use influencers to do it, which I think is a horrendous idea.
I agree.
But if we're going to do it that way, it can't just be like, oh, PewDiePie switched to Linux one time in one video, and then we've never heard about it again. It has to be a consistent thing that he talks about. If that happens, then I think we're going to have a much higher success rate, because people are going to be constantly reminded. They're going to be able to see his success and say, hey, he's doing it. Here's what he's doing. You guys know who Mudahar is? He is some ordinary gamers on YouTube. He has like 3 or 4 million. He's like, I know, he has 3 or 4 million. He's not actually much of a gaming channel, honestly. He talks mostly about politics and scandals and stuff. But anyways, he's a big Linux guy, or at least he was. I don't know if he still is or not. I haven't followed him in a while. But he used to play all of his stuff on Linux, and then basically passed through a GPU for Windows gaming. And I don't think that he moved the. Granted, he's not near. Like, he only has like 3 or 4 million subscribers, so he's like not nearly in PewDiePie's league. But the point I'm trying to make is that he drove some Linux adoption, but it was very, very small. But the reason why he was able to be as successful as he was and having some people use Linux is because he constantly mentioned it over and over and over again. Where I don't know that PewDiePie is going to actually do that. Do you guys know if he's actually made any more mention of?
I saw one video.
Watch his channel.
Yeah. See, this is what I'm talking about. He's not. And maybe somebody in the chat can answer if you guys know. Has he actually mentioned Linux again since that first video?
Actually, he has, because if I remember, I remember watching a second video of him talking about like fixing some of the things, because I think he went to Arch after using Mint or something.
Okay, they're saying that, yeah, he's mentioned. So I think that is actually a good thing, because, like, for example, we talked about this. I don't know if it was probably before you guys came on the podcast, but like a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago, or whatever, Linus Tech Tips did this whole Linux challenge things, right? And their experience wasn't very good. At least Linus's himself wasn't very good. You know, the whole meme of him deleting Pop! OS, which is, you know, hilarious, Nate. But, you know, he did this whole thing. And because their experience wasn't very good, they basically have hardly mentioned Linux since then. I mean, they've done a couple videos, but it's just very, very random. Where before that, they were kind of mentioning it all the time. So I think that it's going to be very interesting to find out if PewDiePie sticks with us. And I think that in order to reach your version of the future, Drew, if he mentions it over and over again, you win the conversation. What were you laughing about there, Nate?
Because it's LTT. What did you expect?
That's true.
That guy.
I mean, I'm sorry. I mean, the dude's built an empire, media empire of tech news, but like Windows Shield 10,000. That's Linus.
He was much more entertaining when they were when it was trying not less to be like hiring 10 million people and, you know, has a whole warehouse full of labs and shit. Like, I don't, just be a regular dude, and you were much more fascinating. Now like there was a while there where we're criticizing LTT now, but like half of the videos he was making for like 6 months or whatever was him showing off his like $30 million house all the damn time. Like, okay, I can relate to that. I can definitely buy a $30 million house or whatever happened to be. You know, it's just like, okay, just whatever.
So, yeah, I missed it when they were in the house, because like they did a whole water cool thing where they used the bathtub and then they water cooled the entire room from the bathtub. Like, I miss videos like that. That was fun and funny and entertaining. Mm-hmm. Now it's just like, oh, this is new piece of hardware, and then they gripe about it.
Yeah.
Okay.
LTT, don't sue us. We're we don't have any money. Okay. All right. Anyways, let's go ahead and get back to the thing. So, moving on past PewDiePie just a little bit, why do you guys think this is happening now? Is it solely because Windows 10 is going away, or do you think that there's other things driving behind it, Drew?
I mean, I think that has a little bit to do with it. I mean, it's going to come sooner rather than later, right? I think October is the deadline for Linux 10 for as far as support is concerned. That I think is important to understand is Linux is in such a good space right now. And even like 2 years ago, you know, because I'm going to talk about Debian for a second. So just hold on, guys. Okay. So Debian 12 came out with and that may have been one of the more important versions that Debian has ever put out. And the reason why is because I think with older software, you're going to have some, you know, you're going to have a lot more stability. I don't want to say that, but that's the truth. You're going to have a lot more stability, but you're not waiting for that next version to come out in something. You don't have to. Because, you know, back when, you know, let's just say a few versions of Debian ago, or any of these distros, you were always waiting for that next version of GNOME or that next version of KDE, because it was a little bit less stable than it really should have been. And you're just waiting on some type of functionality. I don't think we're waiting anymore. I think that we are there in terms of the stability of these desktop environments. And that's what people are seeing now. And so, yeah, everyone talks about and jokes about like Year of the Linux Desktop. The Year of the Linux Desktop has been around for a while now, guys. It's the truth. we are as stable as it needs to be in order for adoption. And that's a fact.
Yeah, I think that the whole thing about the Year Linux desktop thing is it's just become such a meme.
Yeah.
And there's been an expectation on behalf of a lot of Linux nerds that if Linux adoption is going to ever happen, it's going to happen all at once. Like, oh my God, Windows 10 is no longer work. Everyone's going to go use Linux all at one time. It's just completely unrealistic that everyone who stops using Windows is all going to come here at one time. It's just not going to happen. Linux is always going to be very slowly adopted until it reaches whatever its peak is going to be. And that's the reason why the whole Year of the Linux desktop was never really going to be a realistic thing. It's going to be slow. It's going to be steady. And you're absolutely right, Drew. Linux has reached a point where it's very stable and easy to use. Wayland most people aren't going to know what Wayland is, and that's actually a good thing because they're going to be able to just use their computer. They're going to be able to get into GNOME and not care that there's this whole history of X11 versus Wayland thing that we talked about a couple weeks ago. They're just going to be able to use it because the vast majority of people have moved on from using a 1080 where they'd have problems. They can just carry on with their thing, right? And, the vast majority of laptops aren't going to have Wi-Fi problems like they used to back in the day.
Yeah.
Non-existing the sound or the audio issues we had earlier, audio has had a pretty good run. I mean, those are the first audio problems I've had in almost 2 years. I'll probably have them all the time now. Usually they come in bunches, but
you got to understand too, Matt. We are the group that we have here, not just the three of us, but in the chat as well. And a lot of your subscribers are not normal users. Okay. And I hate to be that guy to say this, but we're on the upper side of it in terms of like our ability to understand technology. Okay.
We're nerds.
That's a fact. Whereas most people that are using any type of like computer, they're surfing the web. They're buying something on Amazon. They're checking their email. That's it. And can Linux do all of that? Yeah. And it can do it on like really stinking old hardware. Like Nate says a million times, it's like you get, save your PC, put Linux on it, and give it a shot. What do you have to lose? Because you can't use this like, this bloated piece of crap that has basically put your hardware in an absolute crawl, in a complete crawl. So that has nothing to do with PewDiePie. I'm just saying.
I wish every time we have this conversation about people switching to Linux, I really wish that Linux was easier to install. Like I wish there was a piece of software that you could download on Windows that would just literally install it for you. Like it would do the pre-work or whatever. It would restart your computer, boot you back into an installer, just like Windows does when you need to reinstall Windows. You just go in there and say, hey, I need to reinstall Windows, and it just does everything for you. If Linux was that easy to install, a lot more people would use it. Because I think, I know every time I say this, people look at me funny, but I think that installing Linux is the hardest part of Linux. And the reason why I say that is because I know that if I were to hand, say, my niece or nephew, who are younger than me, USB key with Linux on it and tell them to install Linux, they wouldn't know how to do it. Yeah, and it's not because the Linux installer is hard. Okay. Calamari's is easy. Ubiquity or wherever they call it is easy. There's OpenSUSE and the Fedora ones are a little bit more complicated, but still pretty easy. I'm not going to hand them Gentoo or Linux from scratch. But the problem is, like, Drew, on your computer right now, if you needed to enter into a boot menu, you know how to do it. Okay. And if you were to, if I were in Florida and I were able to hand you my laptop and say, get me into a boot menu, you could probably figure it out, but it's probably going to be different than how yours does it. Yeah. And that's the hardest. I know it's so freaking stupid that's the hardest part, but that's the hardest part. How do you get into a boot menu in order to boot this thing? How do you choose, do you need to know if you're choosing UEFI or legacy BIOS, because some computers still ask you all that stuff. So that part right there, that's the hardest part, and it's the stupidest part because you shouldn't have to deal with that. So I know there's people in the chat like, what are you talking about? Nate, go ahead.
So I think what you're saying is it's not technically the Linux install is hard. It's to get to install it.
Yes.
So basically, if hardware manufacturers would actually put like Linux in Best Buy or Micro Center or, just come preloaded, that would solve the main issue. And honestly, if I had the money, I'd do it myself. I'd just go around like Microsoft and make some shady deals and be like, hey, install Linux on this and sell it.
See, I think that even if, let's say System 76 went to Best Buy and requested to be put in their stores, like they requested a table or whatever it is, whatever they have to pay for that, and say they had the money to do so, I don't think Best Buy would go along with it because they have to support. They'd have to train their staff to sell these things.
Not actually. No. Actually, there is some, like, for example, I know for a fact if you buy a Mac there that's in Best Buy, they will actually tell you, okay, do you want the Apple Care? Because if something goes wrong with this Mac, you're going to have to send it to them.
Okay.
Right, but
yeah.
No,
so they don't support it at all.
No. That's not the type of support I'm talking. No, that's the Geek Squad kind of thing. What I'm talking about is they have to be able to answer questions about it in order to sell it. So one of the things the Best Buy employee goes through is a training for the products that they're going to sell in their department, right? So that they'll be able to answer basic level things about, gaming and, things on Windows and how much RAM you might need and stuff like that, right? And those questions are going to be basically the same for Linux, but Best Buy would have to put in the monetary resources to make that training possible to cover what Linux would have to offer. And I don't think that they would be willing to do that for such a small portion of revenue, which they'd be likely to get. They'd have to have something out of it, right? Because it's a company.
Well, I mean, once again, you make that deal with them, like you pick up that monetary value to make that training. But at the same time, I'm also the turd that walks in and says, "I know more than you. Walk away. Leave me alone."
Okay, so
I'm just saying. Funny
fucking story is I'm exactly that guy, and then when I'm ready to check out, there's no one around. Okay, like yeah, you were a douchebag to me. Like I'm not gonna check you out. You can just wait for me to show back up, and then they usually have to go. Oh well, hold on a second. I gotta go find the keys. And it takes them 20 minutes to go find the keys. Yikes. And when they do find the keys, the laptop that you want to buy isn't actually where it's supposed to be. So they have to open up every single freaking little door.
Or go in the back.
And then they realize that then you get home, you realize that they gave you the one with 8 gigabytes of RAM instead of 16 gigabytes of RAM. Like, come on, man.
Yep.
Okay, pro tip, just don't buy your computers from Best Buy.
Nope.
All right.
It's the same, by the way, it's the same guy that you have to call for tech support when your internet is down too. Have you tried to restart the router?
Exactly the same guy. And he's reading that from not like an online or like digital notebook. He has like a trapper keeper full of where you're supposed to go. Probably has stickers on it too. All right. So what else do you guys want to talk about? Is there anything here that we needed to hit on again before we move on to the Nuggies of the week?
Oh, I was going to answer you about the Windows thing.
Oh, I got distracted. So go ahead, Nate.
I was just going to say that I think the main reason why this is happening and people are trying to use Linux in general is just for a simple fact. Number one is Copilot and number two is Recall. Those are the two main features in Windows 11 that people are really ticked off about because it literally is taking pictures of what you're doing on your desktop to hold it for you. I guarantee there's a server somewhere just ripping all of it. And so I think a lot of people are really mad about that. And, over time, I still feel like that Linux is going to keep growing bigger because I feel like, you have a company like Valve that is just dedicated to just, okay, we got to make Linux work because we don't like the direction of, that Microsoft is doing. And eventually, can somebody please take them to the Supreme Court? Because Microsoft is a monopoly. Please.
It's been done. Just
it needs to be done again. Like, do you know how many game developers they bought? Like that doesn't need to happen. That is a monopoly.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see, but I don't. I wonder if that did happen, if they just break off Windows. But granted, even back in the 90s when they had the whole antitrust thing, they didn't break anything off. They just said you have to put out a browser ballot so people can choose, which then everybody proceeded just to choose Internet Explorer because that's what they've been using the whole time, you know. And that's the reason why Netscape Navigator is gone and why Firefox decided it was declining and stuff. So, yeah, our government is ineffectual. Imagine that. All right. On that note, Nuggies of the week. So, my friends, I am in a situation where I have horrible friends. And they have forced me to call the last section of the podcast Nuggies because they know that I hate the word Nuggies. Basically, these things are software or apps or tips or tricks or basically whatever it is. We've found some things that we want to share with you guys, and we call them Nuggies. Happens every week at the end of the show. So, Drew, your Nuggie of the week.
My Nuggie of the week is OBS Studio because it's maybe...
You got this, you know. It's like you guys seen Bruce Almighty? Where he plays the horn. Yeah, play this note all day, buddy.
That's all I got, bro.
Oh, I've got actual tears. Holy crap!
So, these are, you know, you're lucky you sent me a hat, Drew. I'm just saying.
You're welcome.
At least I know you like me. All right, you fucking troll. Nate,
my Nuggie of the week.
Swear to God, if you say anything about OpenSUSE, I will murder all your cows.
Too easy.
I'm just saying. Yeah. All right, Nate, your Nuggie of the week, please.
I actually have a serious one. So
good.
I was given this for free, so don't freak out for people that sees it. I was given this for free to just play around with, and yeah, I didn't have a charger, so I went on Amazon, as I do, and bought some Ugreen stuff, and I highly recommend the Ugreen products. Like, they have USB-C hubs, they have Thunderbolt docking stations, they have the charger that I bought for this one. The cables are pretty cheap, and it's, like, really solid stuff. Matter of fact, I'll grab this just so you can show it. This thing is like a brick. And it's 65 watts. And I think I paid like $25 for it. So I'm just saying. Good stuff.
I've been looking at the Ugreen NAS stuff because it's a little bit cheaper than Synology. And I want to get rid of the NFS stuff that I have. My NFS share is like really weird. I have to have a whole other computer to do it. So I've been looking into that kind of stuff for later on. So the problem is I haven't seen any reviews that aren't old. Like they were all like when they first came out. So I need to wait until there's some reviews like, oh my God, 6 months later or a year later or whatever it is to see how actually they've held up. Because the software there at the beginning was apparently pretty rough. But anyways, I've been looking at that. So my Nuggie of the week is an application called Meld. Now, Meld is a very old application. It's been around forever. But I've been messing around with my website, and I've had some, shall we say, CSS issues. And not necessarily because of CSS, but because I'm a dumbass and don't know how to actually use CSS. So I've been trying to do some things. And one of the things that I've had to do is kind of compare the original file to the changes that I've made and to see kind of where I went wrong. And I know that you can use diff in the terminal, but it's not quite as good as Meld. Meld basically takes two files, compares them side by side, and literally highlights the differences. And it will just literally point to where the differences are in the file. It's invaluable if you're trying to compare two different files. So I highly recommend Meld if you need to compare two files, or I think it actually will do 3 files if you need to. So that's my Nuggie of the week. All right, so Nate is getting lambasted in the chat just a little bit, but
it was free. I take anything for free.
And as everybody knows, I actually paid for mine. So and there was about a 30-second period of tonight where I was like, you know what, we're going to be recording the podcast from the Mac. You know, so that almost happened. So anyways, that is it for the Linux Cast. If you want to get in contact with us, the best way to do so is email. Our email address is email@thelinuxcast.org. If you need to get in contact with the fellas, just email that address and I will forward it on to them. You can follow me on Mastodon and all that stuff. That link will be in the video description and on my website, which is thelinuxcast.org/contact is the page where you find all the contact information. Drew is Just a Guy Linux. He is on YouTube. You can go follow him. He does streaming now. Drew, you did a stream this past week. I completely missed it. What did you talk
Sunday.
about?
Did an installation. I did another project for DK Window Manager. So to do installation and a new configuration for DK.
So your quest is to do all the Xorg window managers. That's your quest?
Why not?
Okay. Do you? I feel like I've asked you this before, but do you foresee a situation where Wayland enters the script ever?
Never say never. Never say never. I looked at Neri fairly recent.
Okay.
It's just not my cup of tea, but I think it's kind of cool.
Cool. All right. One of these days, we'll get Drew in the future. Nate Picks Tech World on YouTube. You go over to subscribe to his channel. He makes content mostly about hardware. So if you were interested in the hardware side of this kind of stuff, go subscribe to his channel. Tyler, who's not here, does not get a shout out. He needs to actually show up for the podcast in order for that to happen. So if you want to subscribe to me, I'm at the Linux Cast on YouTube. You can watch us live every Tuesday at 8:00 p.m. Eastern Time. Normally, yes, you get the little penguin. Mine's directly. You're not gonna be able to see it. It's off camera, but I have one of those too. But wait a minute, hold on a second. So Matt, if you do that, I'm unsubbing. I don't know what you're referring to, Darth Vader. I'm sorry about that. And anyways, I got distracted there by Nate and his little penguin. I was doing so good too. Damn it, Nate. I had this ending. It was good. I had it rehearsed. I literally sat in front of the mirror and said, Matt, you're gonna practice the damn ending so you don't have to say every 5 seconds. And Nate said, God. All right, I don't know where I'm going. Anyways, let's see here. I've completely forgotten. So anyways, that's it for us. We record us live every Tuesday. Watch us live. If you can't watch us live, we do put the edited version up on YouTube on Saturdays evenings, recorded by Mr. Nate there, and you can also watch or you can listen to the edited. Damn it, Nate. Seriously, I was doing so damn good. You can listen to the audio version on any audio podcatcher thingamajig that you want. I was doing so good. I'm literally going to cry. Anyways, give us a review on Apple Podcasts if you use that application. Even if you don't, go leave a review anyways. We'd appreciate that. Anyways, we'll see you guys next time. And I'll continue working on ending. Next time, I'm just going to turn Nate's video off so he can't distract me. So anyways, we'll see you guys next time.